Hey everyone, today I'm going to dive into the realm of cult cinema with a discussion of the grotesque body horror world of street trash, both the 1987 cult classic and its 2024 reimagining directed by Ryan Kruger. This video will contain spoilers, so it's not going to be a typical review, it's going to be more of an exploratory video. These films feature a lot of elements of dystopian fiction with all the potential there for dark satire and sociocultural commentary. I would even say that the 2024 remake throws in elements of cyberpunk chaos into the mix. To begin with, let's go back to the original 1987 Street Trash, which was directed by J. Michael Moreau and written by Roy Frumkes, which is an all-out, grimy, nihilistic horror comedy in the spirit of a trauma movie, which just throws any semblance of morality out the window, and its intent is to utterly disgust, offend, and horrify its audience in every single scene. The plot of the movie, well, it's barely there. Homeless vagrants start melting into psychedelic puddles of gore after drinking this toxic substance called Tenafly Viper, a cheap booze sold at a local liquor store in Brooklyn. The most insane, over-the-top scene in the movie occurs when one of the vagrants gets his junk lopped off, and yeah, it becomes this grotesque game where his fellow vagrants are just tossing it up in the air to each other, and the whole film is full of this kind of mean-spirited, grotesque humor, and doesn't really offer much in the way of social commentary beyond the view that society is basically garbage and so are the people in it. I mean, fair enough, I guess. But the homeless characters really don't have a lot of agency or autonomy, and they're just victims of their own degradation. Fast forward to the 2024 remake, directed by the South African filmmaker Ryan Kruger, who is best known for his gonzo, acid-drenched psychedelic movie Fried Berry, which I would also strongly encourage you to go watch, which I think is available to stream right now on Shudder. But to return to this 2024 remake, which actually is not so much a remake as a complete reinvention, switching out the toxic liquor alcohol plot with something that I think is much more sinister and terrifying. The toxic substance here is a bioweapon called Chemical Agent V, which is part of this government plot to exterminate the homeless population. Many of the homeless characters in the movie here are comprised of different ethnic and minority groups, so there is an element of ethnic cleansing to the plot here. At the heart of this madness is Ronald, played by Sean Cameron Michael, who leads a ragtag band of misfits in an all-out revolt against the corrupt mayor, played to absolute maniacal perfection by Warwick Greer. Unlike the original, this street trash actually gives its characters agency. The homeless aren't just cannon fodder for gross-out gags, they're underdogs fighting back. I just want to give a shout out to one of the side characters in the movie named Chef, played by Joe Vaz, one of the homeless vagrants in the movie, and for me, just one of the major highlights, especially in one scene where he gives this insanely funny rant and just goes on this digression, giving this commentary on the story of Pinocchio, of all things, and explaining how Pinocchio is just this barely veiled metaphor for human trafficking. And it was just so utterly random, funny, edgy, and biting, and totally in keeping with the rest of the film's scathing social satire. And I just really love Chef's character, and his personality just really was, like, in a lot of ways, like the heart of the movie for me. I, of course, have to mention the character of Geep, played by Carol Nell, who played the protagonist in Fried Berry. Geep is a schizophrenic vagrant and friend of Ronald who talks to a perverted, foul-mouthed creature in his head named Reggie, voiced by Ryan Kruger. Reggie is basically just a walking libido, just this phallic, disgusting little entity, and I kind of saw him as this grotesque expression and embodiment of the underclass's stifled, repressed desires and appetites, and also just kind of embodiment and reflection of the irrational tendencies driving the entire system and establishment. Both versions of Street Trash very much fit into the category of what are called melt movies, very much reveling in their practical effects driven body horror. Like the 1987 Street Trash, the 2024 version very much leans into its low budget, rubbery, psychedelic splatter. I mean, we're talking full body dissolves, horrific mutations, and heads exploding in gloriously fake psychedelic fashion. And so Kruger very much embraces the campiness of its old school practical effects and makes their fakeness part of the fun here. While the original had a deranged ex-Vietnam War vet as its pseudo-antagonist, the 2024 version gives us a corrupt mayor who is an authoritarian nightmare who profits off suffering and despair. The film doesn't just depict the mayor as evil, it really makes him a grotesque caricature of real-world corruption. Now, I mentioned how the 2024 remake leans a little bit into the cyberpunk fiction, and that comes out in the way it depicts and portrays its dystopian near future, which, like in a lot of cyberpunk fiction, features a kind of high-tech world, but with a low quality of life, where business interests and greed drive the system while everyone else suffers within it. But also it pulls from the cyberpunk genre and this whole subplot involving this performance enhancing drug sold on the black market, which Ronald at one point gets a hold of, and it leads into this crazy scene in the third act. Another brilliant touch of the 2024 remake is how it frames its story with these satirical news broadcasts, which for me were a clear nod to RoboCop, right? These segments in the movie just really hammer home its themes of how the media and the ultra rich just manipulate reality while the disenfranchised and the homeless are literally wiped off the map. It's like RoboCop meets the Toxic Avenger, but drenched in South African socio-political angst. So what's the biggest difference between both versions? Well, I think it falls primarily on the difference in tone. While the 1987 Street Trash is pure nihilism, basically saying life is filth, so deal with it, I would say the tone of the 2024 reimagining is not nihilistic per se. It's more angry. It's basically just a middle finger, I would say, to the establishment, and also a wish fulfillment fantasy where the underclass fight back. And so that was like the key difference when I watched both movies. If you're seeking a pure, unadulterated, unfiltered trash cinema experience, then the 1987 film is still this great exploitation underground classic. If you're looking for something with just as much splatter, but with a sharper satirical edge, then I would go and check out Ryan Kruger's Reimagining, which is honestly my personal preference. I just think Kruger's film gives you a little more to chew on, has a little more bite and edge to it. But let me know if you've seen either version of Street Trash, what your thoughts are. Share your insights in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time here.